So if you stand at the edge of like a massive ancient forest, you kind of can't help but ask the big questions, right?
Hmm.
Why are you here? Is there a design to all this?
Yeah, exactly. And usually you're told that finding the truth means leaving that forest and heading into a sterile lab.
Right, that faith is just this blind leap in the dark, totally divorced from logic. But today, we're doing a deep dive into excerpts from a text called The Architecture of the Unseen. And the mission of this source is to flip that idea entirely.
Right. The text maps out this logical framework, like the structural bones of the universe, to argue that Christian faith is actually a leap into reason. And just a quick reminder for you listening, we're simply exploring the ideas presented in this material, not endorsing them. We're just looking at the logic the author uses.
Exactly. We're just impartial guides here. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the author doesn't start with ancient texts. They start with physics.
Yeah, the physical universe.
Right. The book leans heavily on the cosmological argument.
Well,
It's like if you walk into an empty room and hear a clock ticking, you don't assume it just, materialized out of thin air.
you assume a clockmaker.
Exactly. And the author points out that science overwhelmingly agrees the universe had a starting point, like a first spark.
And here is where the text draws a really hard logical line. Because if the universe, meaning, all matter, space, and time had a beginning, then whatever caused it must logically exist outside of matter, space, and time.
Because you can't be the house if you built the house.
Right, exactly. What's fascinating here is how the author argues this mechanism necessitates a timeless, immaterial mind rather than some cosmic lottery.
But, a cause doesn't necessarily mean a conscious designer, right?
Yeah.
To argue for intent, the author brings up the fine-tuning of the universe.
Yeah, the teleological argument.
Right. They point to the gravity constant and the expansion rate of space. If you tweak either by the width of a human hair, stars don't form. And, well, you and I aren't here listening to this deep dive.
It's incredibly precise.
Yeah, it is. I like to use the royal flush analogy from the text. It's like playing poker, and your opponent deals a royal flush. Once, you think they're lucky. For 1,000 years straight, you assume the game is rigged. So is the universe rigged for life.
Well, the text uses math to argue against a cosmic lottery, suggesting that betting on 1 billion consecutive lucky accidents is actually less logical than betting on a deliberate act of will.
Okay, so the math might suggest a cosmic engineer. But a cosmic engineer doesn't necessarily care about how we treat each other.
That's a very good point.
So how does the text bridge the gap between a distant creator and a personal one?
So they do this by moving from the physical laws of the universe to our internal laws, the moral argument.
Right.
The author points out that humans universally possess this sense of ought. Like when we witness cruelty, we don't just say it's inefficient, we feel it is objectively wrong.
It hits us on a gut level.
Exactly. The text argues this internal compass implies a true north and, by extension, a lawgiver.
Okay, but I have to push back using the text's own challenge here. Couldn't that moral compass just be like an evolutionary survival tool?
Right. Biological programming to keep the species from wiping itself out.
Yeah, exactly.
That is the classic counter. But the author's response is that if morality is strictly biological, then there's no actual right or wrong, only what helps us survive.
But we don't live like that.
We don't. We live as if objective evil and good truly exist. The text suggests this proves morality is like a visionary text woven into our DNA, not just a survival tactic.
And then they ground this in history, right?
Yeah.
With the minimal facts about Jesus.
Yes, the historical anchor. That Jesus was executed, and shortly after his followers went from terrified fishermen hiding in rooms to people who willingly died facing lions and crosses.
Because psychologically, people rarely choose to be tortured for something they know they made up.
Exactly. The source argues the resurrection is presented as the most logical explanation for why the early church exploded the way it did.
But hold on. If the author's logic points to a perfectly designed framework by a loving creator, how do they account for a world that is so clearly broken? The problem of evil seems like a massive roadblock.
Oh, it is a massive hurdle, and the text totally acknowledges that.
Right.
But it points out that the Christian framework doesn't try to philosophically explain suffering away. Instead, the narrative claims God physically enters the suffering.
The central image is the cross, not a throne.
Yes, exactly. God stepping into the brokenness.
The author uses a great stained glass window analogy for this.
Yeah.
Like, from the outside, looking at a cathedral window, you just see dull gray lead lines.
That's the pure logic.
Right. But faith is stepping inside the building, Suddenly the light pours through and you see vibrant crimsons and blues.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, reason and wonder aren't enemies. They are two eyes giving you reality in 3D. Reason gives you the depth, and wonder gives you the color.
It really is a cumulative case. The ticking clock of the Big Bang, the fine-tuning, the moral compass, history, the text pieces them together as a logical map of reality.
It's a compelling angle, positioning faith as the logical conclusion of the evidence.
It is, but the author leads you with an incredible tension to mull over. They invite you to use human logic to deduce a creator. But if our minds are strictly bound by the laws of space and time, what happens when human logic hits its absolute limit? Trying to comprehend a mind that exists entirely outside of it. Something to think about next time you're wandering through that ancient forest.